All right. It looks like we have everyone in it. Is that
Great.
Mhm. Yep.
correct?
Mhm.
Awesome. I know CP might was gonna try to join if he
Okay.
could during practice, but he'll jump in
All
if he
right.
can. Just a little reminder for everyone, just like normal, keep your microphones on mute. Unless of course Q&A, you can ask Mr. Paulin any questions. But we do have Mr. Paulin. He's gonna speak to us. And then I'll give it to him. Let me share my screen real
Okay.
fast.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for letting me interrupt your dinner tonight. Um, I really enjoy this. As you probably have seen on some of the notes and the handouts, I am a former preceptor. I started off working at, well, let me back that up even farther. I guess that would be the next slide. I started off at Cal State Fullerton, and back in the Stone Age, they call that the curriculum programs. So just like you, there were a certain number of universities that were designated a curriculum program, just like you're designated an MSAT, you met all the accreditation. So I was very fortunate. I actually went into Cal State Fullerton as a freshman. I hadn't the slightest idea what I was getting myself into other than I wanted to be an athletic trainer. So I did it and I survived it, 4 years. Uh, that is so long ago, just to show you how old I am. NATA governed the whole thing. There was no BOC, there was no Katie, it was just the NATA. So obviously, you are part of a much better system now where there's a lot of checks and balances. So I graduated and I personally wanted to go right to work. Maybe some of you get that bug a little bit that, hey, I've had enough school, I'm ready to go to work. And I was definitely one of those folks. So I actually was able to graduate in January of 1978. And I was already looking at the job flyers. And in those days, you looked at the bulletin board for jobs, on paper. So it was a local high school. For those of you from Southern California, it was in the city of Chino. So I went to a brand new high school in the city of Chino for 3 years. And I was glad I did that. Maybe you can kind of put that in your mental file cabinet. Um, it allowed me to be a head athletic trainer. As a student, you can only do so much. And then obviously you allow your preceptor to do the rest of the work. And now that I'm in the workforce, hey, it's all me. So I learned how to be a head athletic trainer by taking that high school job. And I felt very comfortable with it. I felt I could take all those clinical skills and then I could start enhancing my administrative skills. And I think it was a win-win for me. So I did that for about 3 years. And then again, the old job flyers. Some of you may be very familiar with the school just down the Valley Road there, down 99. Cal State Bakersfield was a very new athletic program. The school itself was kind of new too, especially compared to a place like UOP. And they had a very small athletic program. They only had like 10 sports, 6 men, 4 women, no football. So I said, well, you know what? I think it's about time for me to make a transition. And I did. I applied and I got the job. And it was a great move. It was a great career move. I learned how to be a Division II athletic trainer. Also, kind of on a personal note, again, it's amazing how life works for you, and you can kind of file this away. I met my wife there. I'm still married to her 38 years later. We bought our first home there. So life was great. It could have gotten very easy to get comfortable in Bakersfield. That can be done. Believe it or not, that can be done. But once again, the old job flyers were coming around and I saw this community college job. And me personally, I had no clue what a community college was, what a junior college was. I didn't go to one. I knew there was one in my hometown, but I didn't really know anything about it. So I'm reading about it, and it's a big program. It had like 20 some odd sports. They had football. And for me personally, while I was at Bakersfield, they didn't have football. And I felt like a lot of my professional skills were getting a little stagnated. I thought, well, I do remember football, and I remember that's definitely a professional challenge. So I applied to that job and I got it. And I was very, very happy with it, with that decision. I don't regret that one bit. So if we can go to the next slide. So I got in there in 1983, typical community college. Maybe some of you attended some, maybe some of you have done a clinical rotation at some. Ours isn't probably too much different than what you've been exposed to. We had 20 some odd sports. I was also very fortunate that my first time ever in my career, I finally had another athletic trainer working with me. And this was terrific. So we split the workload and it was a great experience. I started developing a little bit of an athletic training student program at the community college level, and that was slowly coming along. I know I was sharing with some of your coworkers there. Mount Sac, for those of you who don't know where it is, we're down here in Southern California. We sit right in the middle of about 3 freeways, and there's about 5 athletic training programs that are in very easy driving distance. So the first phrase that came up was, "Oh, Andy, you have football there. Great. We'd like to send a couple of our students." And this was a little bit less formal than what you're probably exposed to right now. We want to send this student over, spend the football season with you. Okay, great. So we started doing that. In fact, that's what they were called in the old days. You were called an observation student. And then when you were finally rolling along in your program, then you were actually an athletic training student. So we picked up students from Cal State Fullerton, Cal State Long Beach, University of Laverne, Azusa Pacific, Cal Baptist. So it was a pretty good environment, and the program developed. The care of our athletes was greatly enhanced by students just like you who were passionate about athletic training, and it was just, again, a win-win for everybody. Along the lines, as we started adding staff athletic trainers at Mount Sac, we also started developing a high school program. We were starting to show the kids at the high school level how to articulate from high school to community college, to how to get a bachelor's degree, just like you. And then finally, now is about time to start developing a master's program. So very actively involved in students. It was definitely a learning experience for me, as well as a learning experience for the student. And that's kind of what we're going to work on tonight. If I can get that next slide. So I want to show you some tricks of the trade that you can borrow. If any of the preceptors are listening in, they might want to borrow some of these tricks of the trade. But as a student, I want to give you some of these tools that you can kind of put in your toolbox. So someday, I know this is going to end someday you'll get to a clinical site. And I know most of you are probably just itching to get in there. If you could, how many of you, if you want to just wave, how many of you have already been to a clinical site? If you want to just give me a wave. Oh, good. Okay. All right. And then there's a few that are just getting the ball rolling, and then COVID slammed the door. So let me share a couple of tools for you, and that'll help get the ball rolling. And this will first apply to everybody. It doesn't matter if you've already done a site or you've never been to a site because COVID held you back. But let me just show you some tricks of the trade here. Definitely, as your faculty and your clinical coordinator start making the assignments, and they say, okay, you're going to go to this site, you're going to work with this preceptor. Do the best you can to get to know that preceptor in whatever manner is physically possible. I mean, certainly the telephone is great, the Facebook would be fine, but some way to get to know them personally, to talk to them, to see them. Another simple way, if the campuses are closed or it's difficult to get there or to see them, just go online to the clinical site. Most schools have a pretty good athletic department or sports medicine website. And with a little luck, they might actually have a nice little bio there about the athletic trainer, but just do the best you can to learn about that individual. Someday when we ever get back to a convention environment, I know the CATA symposium is right down the freeway from you. That's a terrific environment to meet your preceptors. It's a little bit less stressful. We're all there for the same reason, to learn, but there's nice little coffee breaks in between. And literally, you can go tap your preceptor on the shoulder and say, hi, my name's Andy Paulin. UOP has assigned me to your site. Oh, great. I was looking forward to meeting you. Yeah, let's go get a cup of coffee and let's talk a little bit about it. Nice, low key, get to learn a little bit about the preceptor. They get to know a little bit about you, and you're already off and running. While you're doing your homework, try to get to know the clinical site as best you can. And the reason I specifically say that is, as you can probably see on your roster, you probably have an abundance of sites. You probably have some high schools, maybe you have some community colleges, definitely some four-year schools, maybe some other sites that other schools don't have. Maybe you have access to a professional team. Maybe you're going to go into a physical therapy or a clinical site. I know a lot of those emerging professions like dance and the military, those are growing. But once you draw your assignment, try to go out and do your homework as best you can. I'll give you an example. A lot of students who are assigned to a high school, they very quickly realize it's going to be the ATC preceptor and you, the student, and that's it, against anywhere from 500 to 700 athletes. I wish you the best of luck on that one. That's going to be quite the learning experience. By the time I left Mount San Antonio College, we had 4 full-time athletic trainers, and they were all preceptors. So that was a terrific environment for the student, because if maybe I wasn't in the room for that second, maybe I had to go into the office and take a call, they could turn to another athletic training student, or they could turn to another preceptor and say, hey, you know, this rehab doesn't seem to be making progress. Do you have any tips of the trade? Oh yeah, try this. Oh yeah, try that. And it's a great way to learn about your coworkers and about how that clinical site is. Get to know the sports and the athletes that you're headed to. And I realized nobody knows everything about athletics. I don't, and I spent my whole career there. But when I took the job at Mount Sac, for example, I had never worked men and women's swimming. We had that. I had never worked men and women's water polo. We had that. And it wasn't just learning the sport, but for example, over the years, we would shuffle some of the sport assignments. Like, Andy, we want you to do softball this year. You're already doing baseball, so why don't you do softball? Oh, okay. Well, there are some similarities there, but there's definitely some dramatic differences between softball and baseball. Now, I know they still have problems with their arm, with their shoulder, with their elbow. So literally over the Christmas break, when it was nice and quiet, I took a page out of your notebook. I got on YouTube and I watched, like, for example, it would be titled, How to Throw a Curveball in Softball. And I'm sitting there, you know, on December 26th, and I'm slowing it down. I'm watching what the elbow and the wrist and the shoulder is doing. And that really helped me get ready for the softball season. Same thing for you. You may draw an assignment where it's just one sport. I know a lot of universities, they'll assign you to a preceptor, and that preceptor may only have like a fall sport and a spring sport. And maybe you're not too familiar with that sport. I got countless students at my place that really didn't know a lot about football, but that's okay. You know, do a little bit of homework. There's going to be a lot of learn by doing. You know, maybe when you're on Christmas vacation or summer vacation or COVID vacation, you know, and you find out what the sports are going to be, yeah, do a little bit of homework. Maybe you have a relative that played the sport, or maybe you have a really good friend that played the sport. Pick their brains, you know, hey, what kind of injuries did you guys have in that environment? The last one is probably equally important. Know the time demands on that. It was very, very common when I would have like that orientation meeting with the students, and I would talk about, for example, well, I'll take both seasons. I'll talk about football. And I'd say something like, okay, at the community college level, football kind of has more resemblance to high school than it did to a university. At community college football, we don't stay in hotels. We don't fly in airplanes. They get in a bus, I get in a van with you, and we drive to where we're going to go if we're going to play a game. And it really is an all-day activity. From the moment you start at the beginning of the day with a little bit of game day orientation, then you do your therapy, and then you go to the game, you work the game, you handle all the injuries, you come back, you clean up, you do your chores. Yeah, it could be a 12-hour day. Now, in Southern California, it's actually, I think it's a little easier because most of the schools we played are only like about 45 minutes away on the freeway. Some of your sites might be that way. Some of them, I know people who worked in the Central Valley, they had some long road trips. But again, do your homework. I always got a kick out of when I work spring. 99% of the time I work baseball and a little bit of softball in the spring. And I would get students coming in and they'd say, oh, well, I've been assigned to you for your sports, baseball and softball. Terrific. And inevitably, you may get this question, well, why are you here? Meaning, like, why have you said okay to working with me with baseball and softball? Well, I want to learn about shoulder injuries. That's good. You will. But you know what? Let me set you up with something here. When I work a baseball game, when I work a Mount Sac baseball game, especially the Saturday games, the good news is at Mount Sac, we didn't have double headers. And I bet some of you are going to breathe a sigh of relief that, oh, I hope my school doesn't have double headers. The bad news is you are there all day. Just to give you an example, all our Saturday baseball games were at 12 noon. I would have to walk down to the coach, and notice I just said walk down to the coach. I didn't say text him. That'll come up later. Coach, 12 o'clock baseball game. What time is batting practice? Well, both teams can take batting practice will be at 10. Okay, what time do you want the ball players on the field? 9. We got some things to do. So that means I have to open up the athletic training clinic at 8 a.m. for a 12 noon baseball game. And for those of you who don't know anything about baseball, there are no time limits. You play until the game is over. And if you have lights, you keep right on playing. So this is just part of learning about your site, learning about your sport, talking it over with the preceptor. It is rather startling. Sometimes somebody thinks you're just going to be looking at shoulders for 8 hours. No, it's not quite like that. So have those conversations with your preceptor. Get to know as much you can about the site. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Communication. I know it's a simple word, and probably a lot of environments that kind of beat you to death with it, but it is huge. And take it from the old guy, some of the art of communication has been lost. Probably, I like to just blame it on technology. It's so much easier to grab that device and text and do all those things with it. Yeah, it does have its advantages. Again, take it from the old guy. The cell phone has actually made the job more or less easier. I mean, we don't have to travel with a first aid kit, and it has quarters in it. I know I'm speaking to a very young population here, but that was our idea of an EAP. You taped quarters to your first aid kit so that if there was an emergency, somebody was going to grab the quarters and run to the payphone and dial 911. I hope some of you know what a payphone is. So anyway, life for the most part is better as far as technology, as far as communication, but it's still a people profession. It's still a healthcare profession. So definitely you're constantly communicating with the preceptor. And this is even starting off on day one, your introductory meeting. It starts off with your orientation with him, like that first day you physically show up. We're going to talk about expectations in just a moment, but this is where it all begins. Preceptor, this is what I want to get out of this clinical site. And the preceptor is going to say something, well, these are my expectations of you. You've got to have that communication. It can literally be as simple as, well, preceptor, I want you to understand that I'm in class until 1 o'clock, so I'm not getting to the clinical site till 2. So I hope that's okay. Well, the preceptor may drop a bombshell on you. Well, you have to understand that football practice starts at 3, or all these athletes are coming in here and have to be outside at 3. If you're walking in here at 2, you're missing a ton of your clinical site development. Okay, I open the doors at 12 noon. That gives us a good 3 hours till practice to get these athletes treated. Let's have a long discussion about your time frame, and you're going to have to do that. The good news too, though, is I also had this to spare with the athlete, or excuse me, with the athletic training student. You know what? Fridays are my day off, so don't even worry about coming in on Fridays. Sunday, all of us are off, so don't even worry about coming in on Sunday. Mondays, they don't really practice. They watch a lot of game film and come in for therapy. So maybe we can construct a schedule where you're going to develop your skills to the best you can, and there won't be a lot of downtime. So again, communication, you got to do it. When you get into that clinical site, you're going to continue this communication. If there are other athletic trainers in there, staff athletic trainers, I hope you're communicating with them, talking to them about skills, about techniques, about mechanisms of injuries, about positive outcomes on treatment plans. Have those discussions. Maybe you're assigned to a preceptor that's working volleyball, but you're working side by side with the athletic trainer that's working tennis, and you both have shoulder injuries. Talk it over with them. That's communication. If you're working in a rather large clinical site, like Mount Sac was, you may have other students from other athletic training programs. Talk to them. They might have some emphasis on a certain treatment technique that you hadn't even been introduced to. And that might be the technique that really gives you a good outcome on the athlete you're working on. So we're talking to all those people. I know it looks simplistic there saying talk to the athletes, but You do. And I know a lot of times we get into robot mode that we're just doing the treatment and okay, get out of here, go to practice, goodbye. But there's some great opportunities for you to reach them at a little bit of a different level. I mean, a lot of times we found out when you're using electrical modalities, you could be spending anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes on a table with them. Some of your manual therapy, you're going to have them on the table for a little while. You would be amazed some of the information you can gather out of an athlete, and you could fast forward that information to someday you're going to have a very heart-to-heart conversation like maybe about their family life and how their family life is affecting their nutritional level or their school environment. Well, they're going to come to you. I always told students that the ultimate compliment was when the athlete walked into the clinic, they walked past me and they went over and talked to you. That is one of my favorite compliments of your skills is they have so much confidence and trust in you. They want to talk it over with you. And that is outstanding. Can't forget the coaches. You're going to have to kind of feel that out with your preceptor, but this is where it starts. So it doesn't come as a surprise when you finally get that first job. Is somewhere, somehow, you've got to kind of work your way in there between your preceptor and your coach. I mean, just as simple as an athlete gets hurt at practice, you bring the athlete over to the treatment table, you and the preceptor are evaluating the injury. It can be as simple as, excuse me, preceptor, would you like me to go tell the coach the status of this athlete, like they're not going to return back to practice, or they're going to be back in about 10 minutes as soon as we do a couple of things? That could be where it starts. Or at the end of the day, you and the preceptor are doing the coach's report, and maybe you want to print a hard copy and then you walk it down to the head coach. Coach, I'm just bringing this down on behalf of the preceptor. Here's today's injury report. I know you're probably aware of what's been going on today, who got banged up, but I just wanted to bring this over to you. It's a simple little thing, but it opens such a great door between you and the coach. They're going to be the one that come looking for you. You know, maybe your preceptor just took a moment, went to the bathroom, and they need a question asked. They're going to come looking for you. Hey, I just have a quick question for you. You know, hey, what's the status on John Jones? Is he going to practice today or not? You know, something as simple as that. But you've made those inroads. And the last one there, I certainly don't want you to forget. Don't forget all the support staff. And I know it sounds simplistic, or maybe some of you might even be going, why? You know, well, who are you talking about? People like the equipment people, the equipment technicians, the administrative assistants that maybe work in the office that you turn your paperwork in, like with the AD's office. Some of you may be working either at the high school and they have a nurse's office, or at a community college or a university with a health center. Try to get to know those folks. It will enhance your work environment tremendously, and you'll take that with you when you get your first job, especially if it's out of school. Your best friend can be that equipment person right there. You're trying to figure out if this helmet is going to be effective for your concussed athlete. Well, you're going to have a little conversation with that equipment person. If you're trying to get you're trying to get emergency forms, emergency contact forms on this athlete. You look in the file and you realize this kid that just showed up on the team, you don't have any documentation on him. You got to run down to that AD's office and you're going to very pleasantly ask the administrative secretary, excuse me, do you have a copy of this form I'm looking for? This kid didn't seem to turn it in. You treat these people like that, maybe once a month, take them a bag of donuts. I'm telling you what, it's going to open up a world of assistance for you. So don't forget all those folks. Okay, let's see what's next. Oh yeah, all our big terms there. Expectations, accountability, professionalism, and mentorship. These are little tools to put in your toolbox, especially when you're interacting directly with your preceptor. Again, that first day, that first meeting, maybe that first week of kind of the mini orientation, really sit down and get down and dirty with your expectations with the preceptor. What is it you personally want out of this clinical site, and how do you want the help of the preceptor to deliver that? Are there certain skills or injuries that you want? Fast forward, I know that I would get a mixed bag at Mount Sac. I would get a first semester student with me, but in that exact same room and that exact same semester, I would get a second year last semester, somebody that was literally getting ready to take the BOC exam. And those expectations from those two students are going to be a little bit different, but we're going to show them how to bring it all together. Likewise, You need to listen to what the preceptor has to say. And the one item that always jumps out at me, and I've met countless students that were in this boat, a lot of times their universities said, oh, we have this site that it's at this professional team. So we might have an opportunity to send you there. Or maybe they're not a major college or university sports program, but they have a clinical site that might be a massive, huge Division I program, and they want to send you there. Great. I think that's a terrific opportunity to see how a different level works compared to maybe where you're at. But again, let's play the expectation card for just a second. Sit down with that preceptor and find out literally what are you going to do. I remember I had a student at Mount Sac work football with me, and he just got done working a major college basketball program, Division I, very prominent, always in the news. And I said, well, that's terrific. What was that like? And the kid just kind of shook his head. And I said, well, what does that mean? Well, we weren't really allowed to touch the athletes. That was the job of the head athletic trainer and the doctors and the physical therapists. And I said, don't tell me, let me guess. You did water and towels, right? He said, yep, that's exactly right. So again, this all comes all the way back to expectations. Sit down with that preceptor, make sure you are abundantly clear on what's going to happen. And that does take you right into accountability. I know coming from your program, your UOP program, and obviously being a part of the CATIE governing body that says how athletic training is taught, you're already on that track. CATIE wants certain things from you. UOP wants certain things from you. So there's going to be a certain level of accountability, and that certainly includes the preceptor as well. And it's a good thing because we want to make sure that by the end of your semester, by the end of your clinical site, you've checked off the boxes. Yes, I wanted to learn this. I wanted to do that. Yes, I have done that. And the preceptor has done the same thing. Have I taught this student this? Have I taught the student that? Is this student better on this last day of clinical site than they were on their first day? You know, if this was one of those second year, last semester students, is this person ready to take the BOC exam? Is this person ready to go get a job in a school environment? Well, that all came from the accountability. The professionalism, I cannot enhance that enough to you as far as how you carry yourself literally on a daily basis. It kind of borrows on what I said earlier about getting to know the staff at your clinical site. That's part of professionalism. You know, walking from the parking lot to the clinic, and as you walk by all those offices, just say good morning to everybody that you bump into. It's a very simple thing, but that's professionalism. A lot of you that are going to be sent to maybe a high school or maybe a community college, one thing that makes those two environments different than like a university is a lot of times you don't travel with certain sports. Pretty much all athletic trainers travel with football. But if we're talking about a basketball or a baseball program at the community college or the high school level, a lot of times the ATC does not travel. But if we know there's an ATC at the school that our team is going to, that's part of professionalism. Or likewise, they're sending their team to you. That's professionalism as far as making a phone call or sending an email. Hey, Jane Jones over at Smith High School, I'm just dropping you this email. I want you to let you know that I'll be covering your game tomorrow night. This is what we provide. And then here's a big one, trick of the trade. Here's what we don't provide. That even went on with football. And you're right. You're going to frown when you find out that they're not going to provide you with water. But you know what? At least they notified you. At least they said, hey, I'm sorry. I just don't have extra water bottles, or I don't have extra coolers. Would you mind bringing your own? Guess what? That works. That works because you know what? You told me. That's part of professionalism. And you're going to learn that from so many different healthcare professionals, including athletic trainers, doing all your clinical sites. And you're going to put these little notes in your toolbox, and you're going to take them with you when you get your own job. Mentorship is very simple. You're sharing with each other, other athletic training students, but don't be bashful about sharing new skills with your preceptor or with another ATC. I can only speak for myself, but I don't have all the answers, especially on injury care. I'm going to have to do my homework if I get stumped. One of the things I did with students like you, especially as I saw you were developing, you were doing a good job with your injury evaluations. You and I would walk over to an athlete. Okay, Emily, I saw this athlete yesterday on practice. I'm suspicious of what's going on with that ankle. I'd like you to take a look at it. And you look at it and you say, yeah, I think it's a grade 2 ATF sprain. Good. That's exactly what I saw. All right, both on the same page. Now, Emily, tell me how you're going to treat it. And as a preceptor, I have to keep an incredibly open mind, because sure enough, about maybe 50% of what Emily's going to say is not what I was going to do. Oh, and I won't say that out loud. I won't say, well, that's not what I would do. But I would say, oh, you're going to do that. Okay. Hey, tell me a little bit about why you're going to do that. Oh, well, I want to get these desired results. I think I'm going to enhance range of motion, or I think I can get better tissue pliability on the rehab plan. And see, you just taught me something. I would not have done that because either I don't know how to do that or I haven't practiced it enough. And as a preceptor, I'm thinking, well, she's not going to do anything that's going to harm the athlete. It sounds very reasonable. Hey, let's do it. And sure enough, it even gets better. Her rehab plan is very productive. We get terrific outcomes. How am I going to stand in the way of that? No way. Well, that was mentorship. She taught me something, and I'm going to hold on to that. And then someday I'm going to share that with somebody. So it's okay for you to show the staff ATCs things that you've learned along the way, whether you learned it in class, whether you learned it from another healthcare professional, but don't be afraid to share it. What will probably happen is the preceptor will probably say, rightfully so, well, why do you want to do that? So again, don't be afraid to speak up and say, well, this is why I want to do this treatment, this part of the treatment. That's okay. Let's do that. All right, let's look at the next one. All right, now this is certainly definitely for the preceptors, but I definitely want you folks to have this as well. Well, Andy, how are we going to get all this stuff laid out? I mean, we got to get to the clinical site pretty soon. You know, how do we share all this information before day one, literally day one? Here are some tips of the trade. Maybe your faculty can share this with the preceptors. At Mount SAC, I mentioned earlier that the 4 staff ATCs were also preceptors. And now here we go, just like you're probably familiar with, somewhere around August. Okay, sports are going to start up here in about a week. Hey, we need to get everybody in the same room so everybody knows what everybody's doing, everybody knows expectations. So in that situation, we brought all the staff ATCs, we brought all the MSAT students in there. We were even able to round up a couple of the community college students that were very focused on learning. We even brought some of those observation students that had already expressed interest. We brought everybody into the same room. And we said, okay, this is the Mount SAC Athletic Training Orientation Meeting. And it would definitely start off very broad, as in discussing assignments, which ATC was responsible for which sports. We would definitely have all of you stand up and introduce yourself, where you're from, who the preceptor was that you were assigned to. So now everybody starts getting a name and a face put together. Then we would talk about, in broad terms, things like, okay, what were the Mount SAC campus policies? Okay, what were the Mount SAC athletic department policies? Okay, so we've kind of talked all these broad subjects that everybody needs to know. Then we'd have, just like a convention, we'd have breakout sessions. Okay, all the football students, go with Andy. Okay, all the cross-country people, go with Bill. All the basketball people, go with Elva. And then you had your little breakout meeting, and that's where you would learn about what's going on specifically in your clinical site environment. So if you're involved in a very large program, that might be a way to get it all done so it doesn't feel like you're repeating yourselves. Now, let's fast forward, which is also very common. What if you're just assigned to a preceptor? It's you and one preceptor. Maybe you're going to work one sport. Or on the other end of that spectrum, what if you're assigned to a high school? You, the preceptor, and about 500 kids in like 25 sports. Well, obviously that's going to be a one-on-one meeting, okay? But you still got to get it done. However you do it, again, you want to get the whole game plan laid out so there are no surprises to you, no surprises to the preceptor, and definitely to the athletic program. When you're in those big meetings, by the way, like the one where you have about 5 staff athletic trainers and they're all preceptors, that's the other reason to get to know them is, yeah, you're assigned a preceptor, but what at 10 o'clock last night, your preceptor calls you and says, hey, Daniel, I think I got the flu, or I think I got COVID. I'm not coming in tomorrow, but you know what, Daniel? We got a lot of athletes coming in. Can you get with Jane, who is in? You two compare notes. Daniel, you share with Jane the injury reports and the treatments that came out of our sports. She's going to help you get those things moving around. So that's one of many reasons why you want to get to know the entire staff. In those big expectation meetings and the orientation meetings, obviously you guys are going to come to the final decisions. Okay, how are we going to do evaluations of each other, the preceptor and the athletic training student, going over written contracts. I mean, I can only imagine what you folks are going to have to do with COVID. I mean, that document alone is probably going to have to be 25 pages. I send you my deepest sympathy because I can't imagine what that meeting is going to be like. All right, let's look at the next one. There we go. Now we're getting into some of the meat and the potatoes. Really get to know what you're getting yourself into in that orientation meeting. So you've been assigned to a preceptor. Maybe that preceptor is only working one sport. Maybe it's something really dramatic, like there's 100 football players, or I know at Mount Sac there was 125 track and field athletes. Make sure you're very clear on what you're getting yourself into. So meaning, when are all those athletes coming in for therapy? Because that's going to be your opportunity to get in there and learn and enhance your skills. You know, like I mentioned earlier, if therapy is from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. and you're showing up at 4, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of learning going on. And if you're saying, well, I want to work with Andy because he works baseball, I do, but is it because you want to be a fan of baseball or because you want to learn about baseball injuries and conditions? And oh, by the way, baseball is not like football where people are dropping every 5 minutes, it seems like. You're going to be sitting in a dugout a long time until you finally get a chance to evaluate an injury. So again, just make sure you're clear on what you're getting yourself into. I'll give you an example about Mount Sac. For those of you who might run or know cross country or distance running, they have an enormous cross country invitational in the fall. And when I say that, I mean there is like last count was 23,000 high school runners spread out over 2 days. Is it a contact sport? Not really. But if you want to develop your skills in gen med, if you want to practice that rectal temperature taking, that's the place to go because they're dropping like flies. They're running a race. The timer is going off like every 7 minutes, and there's like 20, 25 kids to a race. It is something that you have to just experience. It's always in October. So if that's something that gets your attention, keep an eye on the Mount Sac website, Mount Sac Cross Country Invitational, and they'll lay it all out for you. But again, that's just something that you're going to have a discussion with your preceptor. Wow, preceptor, I got assigned to you in cross country. That seems pretty boring. Oh yeah? Come on outside of this meet. I'm going to show you boring. Yeah. Okay, we'll see how that goes. Next slide, please. All right, more fun. I can't emphasize enough to you to immerse yourself into your clinical site. And I know that's a very popular word now. It wasn't used a few years ago in athletic training education, but definitely I cannot emphasize. I did that with our students, and I think we got a lot of good outcomes. It goes back to the same conversation. What are the expectations? And what do you as a student need to do to get in there and become a better athletic training student and inevitably better certified athletic trainer? For those of you who are just getting started, maybe your first year, maybe your first semester, that's why I put this slide in here. I want you to see that, like the movie title, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I want you to see the horrendously bad things as part of that clinical rotation. Yeah, everybody wants to win the Super Bowl or win the NCAA and all that. That's terrific. But yeah, there's a lot more of this other stuff here. I want you to experience the long hours. I want you to have that, 6 a.m. to midnight day. Bad food, no food, horrible, ugly transportation, standing in the rain. I want you to do all that stuff because I want you to go home and go, boy, that was just terrible. I'm not so sure I want to do this for a living. Or maybe like, yeah, maybe I don't want to work in a school. Maybe I want to work in a hospital or a clinic. That's okay too. There is nothing wrong with that. This is not for everybody. You need to go home every day from the clinical site. And if you're saying, wow, that was really wild and crazy, I can't wait to get back there tomorrow and let's do this again. Terrific. This is probably for you. You go home and go, oh my gosh, these athletes are a bunch of whiny little babies. They're driving me crazy. I can't stand it. Yeah, you might have to make a little check there, a little self-check and see if, or at least maybe that site, that type of sport, maybe that's not for you. You know, I've met countless students that did a great job working football, and they go, I want no part of this. You know, I enjoy working athletic training. I enjoy sports. I do not enjoy working football. So what? That's fine. That's great. You did not hurt my feelings at all. A lot of these environments are not for everybody, but I want you to be exposed to it so you can make an informed decision. It goes the other way too. I had countless students that said, basically like me, I didn't even know about this community college, junior college thing. This is quite a deal. And they almost said the exact same phrases I said. I said, you know what? This is almost the best of everything. At the community college, a lot of these are very, very good athletes. They're 1 year away from going to a 4-year school and playing sports. That's a really good athlete. That means it's important for them to come see the athletic trainers. I really like that. And they also said, this is not high school. These are all adults. We don't have to talk to any parents. You got that right. Absolutely correct. So a lot of them walked away and say, hey, this community college gig, that's not a bad deal. You know, it goes the other way too. And I'm sure a couple of you out there are probably thinking this, if not saying this. Well, I want to work pro sports. I want to work this sport in professional sports. Or I want to go on to this major college and I want to win NCAA rings and all that. All right, we'll get to that in just a moment, but it's the same slide. There's good and there's bad. I'll put some fodder in that for you. How would you like to have been a Lakers or a Dodgers athletic trainer this year? And I know both of those head athletic trainers extremely well. I can share some of those stories of what that was like. Next slide, please. Here's a tip of the trade that it doesn't matter what year you are in school, what year, if it's your first or your last clinical site. Here's something I really want to drive home. When you get orientated to your site and you find out, as the slide shows, literally the daily routine. All school athletic training rooms have a daily routine. You know, you got to open up. You probably have to fill the whirlpools up. You know, you got to set some supplies up. You got to check the AED. There are just certain skills or tasks that literally have to be done every day. You do certain things when you open up shop. When you chase all the athletes out and they finally go to practice, there's certain things you're going to have to do then, like restock the heel and lace pads and clean the tables and do all that. And then obviously at the end of the day, you got a lot of cleanup once you finish with the athletes. You guys are probably going to have even more tasks if that cloud of COVID keeps hanging over, but yet you're allowed to still have athletics. I can only imagine what your cleaning policies and procedures are going to be. But get to know these things and get to know them as quickly as possible. These are very routine things, very repetitive things I know you're quite capable of doing. And what I did with that, I took it to the next level, is what I told especially, well, really all of our students, but definitely with the football staff. I said, I want you to make sure you understand these kind of tasks, because at the end of the semester, every single one of you is going to be Andy. You're going to be the head athletic trainer for one football game for the entire week. So everything Andy does as an administrator, from, like I said earlier, from calling the visiting athletic trainer and telling him what we have, to scheduling the van that we need, to find out where the pregame meal is, to packing all the supplies we're going to need for the game, that's going to be your job. Yes, I'll be here to supervise. I'm not going to let you kill anybody, but that's your job. Because you know what? If you don't learn that skill now, then I haven't done my job, because I didn't prepare you for when you enter the workforce. So that's just one little trick of the trade I would strongly recommend you get involved in. Okay, let's see the next one. Yeah, just to kind of wear you out with that whole professionalism. This will take you farther and farther and farther, not just for school, but it'll take you into your career. It'll take you into the workforce. Some of us were talking right before some of you signed on about how this is a very small profession. And we remember you, believe it or not, we remember you when you're a really good athletic training student. And we also remember you when you didn't have such a great year. And fast forward, you're going to be applying for jobs, and that employer is going to be checking your references. And guess who they're going to be calling? Me. What do you think I'm going to say about you? And when you spent your time, and I'm very clear and I'm very honest, meaning like, if you only spent, okay, I know there's some schools that did very short rotations. You're only going to go work with Andy and his softball program for 4 weeks. Okay, I respect that. That's what you're going to do. So if that employer 2 years from now calls me and says, hey, Andy, I need to hire an athletic trainer, and their primary responsibilities are going to be softball. Don't you have some students that used to work softball with you? Yes. Now I want to be careful here because I only spent 4 weeks. Now in 4 weeks, this is what I saw in this, and I make sure I say it, former student. I can't speak for what the student did once they left me. With me, this is what they were good at. But I think you need to contact their other references to make sure you get a clearer picture of what the skills were like here. So again, professionalism goes a long way. And just to show you how that is, you know where else you'll catch it? When we play another school that has an ATC, like usually that's football, or maybe later on in the championships where more ATCs are traveling with their team, and you work the games with me, and you go introduce yourself to that other athletic trainer, they're going to remember you. And later on, when you apply for a job or you're working with them for whatever reason, they're going to remember you. So again, that just highlights the whole word professionalism. Maintain that at all times. You're already representing your profession, you're representing UOP. Just continue that in a positive manner all the way. Okay, what's next? Yeah. And going with that same theme of professionalism, it is extremely difficult to do this job at a school by yourself. I know high schools do it all the time. They're very fortunate to hire an ATC, but a lot of times that's all the school did. They hired one full-time ATC, and they were generous enough to turn to you guys and say, yes, I would like to be a preceptor. Please send me a student. Now, in the perfect world, they probably want about 20 students, but they're not going to get 20 students. But again, how can you make this work? How can one preceptor ATC, how can one athletic training student provide quality care to 500 high school kids playing 20 some odd sports? Well, it is a group effort, and you're going to have to sit down with that preceptor probably during orientation and say, well, how are we going to do this? It could be as simple as saying, yeah, I know hydration is a critical component of an athletic trainer's job, but if we're literally just talking about filling a water cooler, preceptor, isn't there somebody else who can fill the water cooler? My best example of that is what I went through, and I think some of you may still go through it later on. I get to my first job at the high school, and I did it again at Mount Sac. You go to meet the football coach, and what do? Yeah, Andy, I want all my guys' ankles taped every day. Well, be right back. Let me go look in the closet for just a second. You open the closet, there's 10 cases of tape. Coach, that ain't going to happen. I'm telling you. And I'm not being rude, and I'm not being, out of my line, but coach, there's no way we're going to tape the football team every day with 10 cases of tape. And what I had to learn somewhere in my career is I had to kind of rephrase that. Go, coach, I could probably do that. I think I had to do that when I was an undergrad. But coach, do you want me spending, an hour or 2 hours taping ankles? Or would you like me to spend 1 or 2 hours rehabilitating the injuries of the football team? That usually cleared that up. And then to take it to the next level, we did this my entire career at Mount Sac. Some of you have probably already experienced this. The athletes run into the clinic and they go, yeah, I need to be taped. I need to go to practice. What for? Well, I always get my ankles taped. Well, we had the exact same thing at Mount Sac. And so I said, well, you know what? First of all, my student and I are going to double check and make sure you don't have any problems with those ankles. And we would do a very simple injury evaluation for strength and flexibility. Okay, you know what? you're a little deficient. Your Achilles tendon is very tight, or your gastrocs seem to be not very strong. Here's what you're going to do. I'll tape you. As soon as you walk over there, I want you to do that flexibility exercise. You can use that tool right there. I want you to do this strength exercise. Here's the tool right here. I want you to do this proprioception exercise. Here's that tool. And then I'll let you get on the taping table. I'm telling you what, you guys, I had a team of like 75 guys that wanted their ankles taped. The minute I instituted that exercise program, it dropped in. And okay with me, no problem there. So again, these are little situations you're going to sort out, but that's part of this professionalism. How do we do this professionally? Who can I turn to assist me with this? Okay, next slide. Okay, so I'm going to be stopping my blabbing and turn it over to you with your questions. But this was one of my favorite quotes as a preceptor. Again, I was very fortunate to work with others who also were preceptors. And same thing as I said earlier, you know, we had really outstanding students, just like you guys. And once in a while, you get one that wasn't very good. Remember, I was telling you about how I assigned you to plan a football game. I did this with this one student, and you're in charge all week long. And at Mount Sac, on Thursday is packing day for football. So half the staff would stay inside and pack. The other half would go outside and cover football practice with me. So the student obviously had to do these responsibilities. So it's Thursday. We're all kind of getting our game face on. It's going to be a busy day. And that student who was the planner walks up to me and says, it doesn't start well. I know I'm supposed to be the planner, and I know we're supposed to pack today. Okay, right there, that didn't start off well, because you know something bad is coming. Yes. But you know what? You know the Dodgers are in the World Series, right? What does that got to do with football planning? Well, my dad got tickets to the World Series, so we're going. And she just like picked up her backpack and walked out the door. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll duly note that on the evaluations, you know, we do at the end of the year. But that was just a little trick of the trade. It's like the slide says, this isn't just a clinical rotation. This is like a job interview. If you had done that or said that in a job interview, what do you suppose the interview committee is going to think? And it's just another lesson in what I said earlier about professionalism. You could have addressed that about 10 different ways. Andy, I got a question. If I had tickets to the World Series, could I just come back later tonight and pack, or can I come in early tomorrow, Friday, and pack? Andy, if I turn this responsibility over to this person, can I take their responsibility tomorrow? Think of all the 20 different ways you could have redone that. We still got the job done, and you still maintain your professionalism. Well, that student didn't do that. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that it's not just a clinical rotation. It's not just checking boxes off. If I did this, I did that. This is a job interview, because we're going to remember you, good or bad, we're going to remember you. I put these two slides in, or these two pictures, for a couple of reasons. It kind of goes with what I just said. You guys are going to be part of an alumni. And again, as I said earlier, the profession is very small. If you are a very strong athletic trainer, the alumni is going to remember you, and that's just going to blossom in your career. Phone calls are going to be directed towards you. Opportunities are going to be directed towards you. So again, it's not just a clinical rotation. This is 1-2 year job interview. Make the most of it. Make your profession, make your school proud of you. The other slide there, back when I had dark hair, this is an example of how this crazy profession works. I'm at Mount Sac. I'm in charge of track and field. For those of you who know track and field, they have a big old track meet in April. In my day, it was like 4 days. And every conceivable track athlete, from little kids to Olympic athletes, competed. It was a wonderful experience. We brought students in to see how this worked, brought students in to see how elite athletes are. It was also a great venue. We brought every conceivable allied healthcare professional in there. And not only did they help the athletes, but you, the student, got a chance to stand at the finish line with a chiropractor for an hour and talk to them about, well, how does chiropractic fit into athletic training? You went back to the tent and you hung out with a massage therapist for an hour. Wow, I didn't know you could do that. That's really terrific. I'm going to add that to my tool. So it's just a win-win for everybody. So while we're doing this meet, this athletic trainer who I guess owned and operated her clinic, she was responsible for this like world-class 4x1 relay team. And she comes by, she works on her athletes, they go off and compete. And she turns to me and says, Andy, I just want to let you know that you and Mount Sac are doing a really good job in this sports medicine area. This is really a quality medical area. You know, we'll always bring our athletes back. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. She goes on to be the medical director of the 1984 Olympics. So guess whose phone rings? Andy, we need a supervising athletic trainer for one of the sites. Would you be interested in doing it? Heck yeah, man. I couldn't get out the door fast enough. I spent 2 weeks at the Olympics. I would not trade it for any money in the world. It didn't end there. We finished the Olympics. We all go back to our jobs. She calls me a year later. Andy, we're in need of more athletic trainers to travel with U.S. track and field. They always go on tour in Europe in the summer. Would you like to go on one of those trips? Would I? Heck yeah, I would. So again, you don't know where this thing is going to go, except you let your skills speak for themselves. People are going to remember you. People are going to look for you if you're doing a good job. They're going to say, hey, I know somebody that's just a right fit for that job. Let me get a hold of them, or let me give you their number. I'm telling you, it's a win-win. I think the next one is ready to turn over to you. Absolutely. So I've blabbed long enough. I'm going to turn this all over to you. And believe me, if you don't have questions, I've got mine, and you're probably not going to like my questions, but you go right ahead. I'd be happy to help you with anything I can.
Andy, I'm going to start. This is Chris Paulin. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Chris.
Appreciate you taking some time with these students. And I think for you guys, it's important that you realize the history of Andy Paulin. We have had athletes that have gone through Mount Sac that have then come to Pacific. And so I've heard firsthand of the care that he delivers to his athletes and the quality of care. And I really respect him for that. But I also think that you should know that he was our District 8 director, which means he was the bee's knees. He was the guy in charge for our district and represented California, Nevada, and Hawaii to the board in the NATA. So he has not only done a great job of impacting his student athletes, but he's also been a huge contributor to the NATA, and I think we can learn a lot of really good lessons. So as you formulate questions, I think as an entirety of athletic training, that this is one of those resources that I would look to. This is someone that I would consider to be maybe the top expert in his class. So please, Andy, again, we really appreciate your time. I missed the first part. I was at practice, but good to see you, and hope all's well. So
thank you, Chris. Appreciate that very much. I'll tease you guys a little bit. Chris set me up pretty good there. It's fascinating as I got into things like the district work and the NATA board work, where again, here I go again, you can borrow on your skills from your two environments. Those of you who've been in the clinic already, you know there's at least one athlete that in your brain you're going, I really don't want to work on that person, you know, for whatever reason, meaning like they never wash their clothes, they never take a bath, you know, that athlete. Well, fast forward, you're on the district or the NATA board of directors, and there's going to be two members in the association that are just going to like corner you, and they're just going to wear you out with their platform of what they think you should do for the NATA. You can't run away. You're supposed to represent them, so you have to sit there and do this. Just like with that stinky athlete, you got to keep working on them, you know. So again, it's not just you as a student or you as a clinician. You're going to take a lot of these skills with you wherever you're going.
Yeah, I want to thank you for presenting to us. I can't speak for everyone, but I definitely put some more tools in my toolbox, so I appreciate it. Do you mind me sharing your presentation with all of my fellow classmates?
Please do. Please do. Glad to help.
Awesome. I'll share that with everyone.
I have a question.
Okay.
So what's the best way to maintain a mentor-mentee relationship with the previous preceptor?
Oh, okay. So you're done with that site and you've moved on, but you want to maintain that relationship. Probably like what you do, like with your own friends, with your own teachers, whatever your core group is. But obviously, we're kind of putting it under the head of your profession or professionalism. Yeah, for example, let's say your first clinical rotation might have been at UOP, and that was a nice, comfortable relationship. You're already going to school there. You see that preceptor almost on a daily basis. Then you go to your next one, and maybe it's at the local high school across town or local community college across town. So yeah, you're still going to UOP for class, but you're just not seeing some of those individuals. You kind of have to go out of your way, I think would be the easy answer. So every time you go to class at UOP, and if you know your old preceptors there, make a point of stopping in. Just like I said earlier about equipment people and secretaries and all those folks, stop by and see them. Make sure you're attending functions. Like for example, if you finally get an off night and maybe that former preceptor's got a competition that night, swing by the clinic and just say hello or bring them a Starbucks or something. Keep that connection going. When you're at your new site and maybe you have just some really unusual injury, or here's a good one, you're at a high school site and they don't have the same modalities that maybe you had at your previous site. And you go, wow, if I had that tool, I know I could really enhance the care of this high school kid. Let me contact my old preceptor and throw that at him and say, hey, old preceptor, you know, this kid has that exact same injury that you and I were working on when I was back over here. And I remember we had that terrific tool that helped the kid. Well, we ain't got that tool at the high school. What are some of my options? Oh, well, try this, try that, do this, do that, try this. Now you're continuing to maintain that relationship professionally, and you're kind of moving up the rank as being a colleague too. And like I said earlier, in those non-clinic environments, you're going to symposiums, you're going to conventions, you're going to activities at school. Just continually to bond with them. Again, it'll pay off, just like what I mentioned earlier about when you finally get on the job hunt, is you want to nurture those really good relationships because they're going to pay off for you as you guys enter the workforce. We constantly, you ask Chris, we constantly get phone calls. Andy, I'm looking for somebody that can do this. Who do you have in mind? We get a lot of, we call them the last minute phone calls. Somebody's supposed to go on a road trip and maybe that person, that athletic trainer got sick. They call you because they know you worked on that sport. Hey, who do you know that could fill this spot? I need them to do this and this and this and this and this. It all came from that relationship. It came from that strong. So it's just like your regular friends. You nurture these relationships, whether it's on the phone, whether it's in person, whether it's through professional involvement. Just keep nurturing it. I think that's my quick and easy answer. What else can I help you with?
I have another question.
Sure.
How would you handle conflict with your preceptor?
Ooh, that's a good one. Oh yeah. As I say, as you heard already, obviously I had a couple of those. You know what? I'm going to borrow from a really ugly incident I had with actually like two students. Remember I told you guys that I had the students plan a football game, and that particular week we had two. They butted heads. I mean, in life, there's just going to be people you just don't get along with. But as a preceptor, not to mention the athletic trainer for that sport, I have to resolve this because it's going to affect a lot of things if I don't resolve it. So one of the things we did is, I think, like, remember I said Thursday, I think was packing day. So Wednesday night before we all went home, I'd say, hey, you two planners, come on in the office. Let's just kind of go over any questions you have, anything you're not clear about, because tomorrow's packing day. And these two just start going at each other. Now, it started as a difference in opinion of how they were going to do some tasks. And I kind of did this because, like, okay, they're addressing the topic at hand. Well, all of a sudden, it started getting personal, as in like, well, you know, you don't know anything about football because you didn't play it. Oh, yeah, you're saying that to me because I'm a girl? Well, I do know. And we're getting into that. Whoa, time out. We need to address the issue of the packing or the. This is not a forum for personal attacks. And borrow that with your preceptor relationship. If there is something that you didn't agree with, maybe it was something personal, you need to find the correct environment to address it. Like for me, when I did, I mean, I certainly wasn't perfect. I certainly had some conflict. they would come up to me, usually when they arrived for clinical site that day. Andy, I need to talk to you. Okay. Is this like about an injury? Is this about an athlete? It's kind of like about preceptor and athletic training student. Okay. Well, let's see here. What will be the best time? We could do it a couple of ways. If you think it's going to be kind of brief, you and I could just stand in that corner of the football field so that we're still watching practice. But I know there's certain parts of football practice they're just kind of walking through. They're not going to get hurt, but we're watching it. It'll just be you and I to talk. We can do it out there. Or if you want to finish the day and we close the doors at night, it'll just be you and I in the office, and we can talk about it then. So if the student has anxiety about the topic they're going to discuss, you need to kind of diffuse that anxiety, both you, the student, as well as the preceptor, and like, okay, let's get through the day, let's get our work done, then let's sit down and talk about it. And then, like I said earlier, the next part is try to address the actual issue. Like, I don't feel comfortable. I know one thing I had to work very hard at, and the faculty did this with me. Well, Andy, there's many, many learning styles of students. Well, being the old fart in the group, I would say things like, yeah, but we have to take care of the athletes, and I don't have time to learn 10 learning styles. Well, that was probably a bad answer. I need to learn them. I need to try to learn them. I need to try to work very hard with the student, because you're right. One of my things, and Chris may know this one, I'm a little strong, especially in the middle of a football game when people are going to die. If I need the knee immobilizer here right now, I'm not going to be very polite. I'm going to say, Emily, get the knee immobilizer over here right now. And that's how it's going to come out of my mouth. And sure, there's going to be a student out there that goes, wow, that's kind of nasty. Okay, please try to remember I was talking about the knee immobilizer. I wasn't talking about you, just try to roll it. And the other part of me was like, okay, do you understand what we're doing out here? We're out here with football. There's like 150 crazy people out here that are behaving a lot worse than I am, so I'm sorry if that offends you. And that could be part of that conversation. If that was the topic of the conversation, I would have to take a step back as the preceptor and go, you're right. That probably was out of line. I probably could have phrased that, a couple different ways, and I didn't do it. And I hope you don't take offense to that. As you've probably learned, this is a little bit of my personality. So you're right. I'm going to work hard at not speaking to you that way. See, at least I said I'm going to try. I can't promise you I'm going to. Hey, but it's got to come the other way. Remember I showed you that slide about the daily maintenance every day? Opening chores, practice time chores, closing chores. That's one that would get me hot, because you are very well educated, intelligent athletic training students. And if we're in week 5 and nobody has filled the whirlpool when we arrive, I'm going to get a little hot about that. And I'm not going to hold back either. As in, like, you're supposed to be healthcare professionals with responsibilities. What are you, waiting around for somebody else to do it? No, that's not how it works here. It's going to come out of my mouth like that. And yes, there's going to be individual students that say, that was rather offensive. Okay, well, then I'll sit down and I'll find out what it was offensive about it. I also want you to see it from the preceptor's viewpoint. Okay, maybe this is what I was trying to get at and I didn't phrase it right. So like I said, with that conflict with the 2 students, try to identify the actual subject, the actual topic that brought you into that meeting. You may not like the way the preceptor wears their hair or the way they dress, but that's not going to be your call. You're going to be out of there in no time. But it's a behavioral problem. If you feel you're not learning anything, I know that's a big one that I've talked to students about. Remember I said earlier, they went to some gigantic program and they were all excited. And they said, yeah, I came back and they wouldn't let me. Well, maybe you go to a clinical site where you understand there's going to be a lot of learning going on. And you, after maybe 2 weeks, you realize you're not learning. That would be a great topic with the preceptor. It's almost like making an appointment. Hey, can I talk to you maybe at the end of the day? I know we just had those evaluations, our skill development. I'd really like to talk to you about some things about, learning in here. And that's when you can do it. I know a real common one with those big programs is that I've seen many head athletic trainers tell the student, yes, I know you're here to learn, but this is my job. I am the head basketball athletic trainer, and the coach and the AD expect me to handle all the injuries. Okay, I respect that. But you also said you wanted to be a preceptor. Could you involve me in more of this activity? Could you involve me in more of this injury process? So again, you're addressing the topic, you're addressing your concern, and between the two of you, you're going to seek some kind of resolution, some kind of middle ground. By all means, if you attempt it again and it does not get resolved, or even worse, the environment and the situation gets worse, obviously you're at with the clinical coordinator or your faculty, and that would be reasonable. But you want to make the attempt to resolve it with the preceptor, because that tool, you're going to need that later on when you get into the workforce. I've met many young professionals. They have a problem with a coach, and you know what they did? They ran to the AD's office. Is that wrong? No, I think wrong is not the correct term. But if you're having a problem with the coach, why don't you go talk to the coach? You know, I mean, it's just same as you and the preceptor. If it's a problem with the preceptor or the way something is getting done or not getting done, talk to the preceptor about it. You'd be pleasantly surprised how it gets resolved. If it's not getting resolved, and like I said earlier, you've made attempts, maybe the preceptor made it, and it's not getting resolved and you're uncomfortable, yeah, you need to let the clinical coordinator know. You need to let your faculty know, whoever is the most appropriate individual. That's the same scenario as when I finally do go to the AD. And I'm going to share this with you guys. You're part of a generation where there's a lot of athletic trainers who have now become athletic directors. And I know most of them. You know what's fun for that? I'll ask every one of them the exact same question. I said, what beefs you the most? What bothers you the most? He goes, people coming in my office, whining, complaining, but they don't bring any possible solutions to the problem. Bingo. Does that sound familiar? Like with your relationship with a preceptor or whoever? You don't like something, you go to the AD. You've told the AD that I've tried to work it out with the coach. It's not working out. And the AD, I hope, will say something. So how do we resolve this? Oh, funny you should mention this. Let me pull my list out here and I'll show you how we can resolve this. It's not much different between you and the preceptor. Well, if you're not going to let me touch the athletes, can I at least be standing next to you with the injury report so I can absorb all of your skills and techniques, and maybe I can follow up on the rehabilitation? There you are. You're addressing the situation. Does that help? That help a little bit? Yes, no, maybe so. It's direct contact. You can't text them. You can't email them. You got to sit down with them face to face and iron it out. You're going to be doing that your entire career. I mean, that's athletic training. You're either going to be doing that with the athlete, you're going to be doing that with a coach, maybe an AD, maybe a coworker. But if you iron it out one-on-one, most of the time you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Like sometimes the words, oh, I didn't know I was doing that, will come out of your mouth. And that might be an easy resolve. So definitely go directly with it. And if you don't feel you resolved it, make sure you have those other tools, those other individuals you can go to. What else can I help you with?
I think respecting your time, Mr. Paulin, and everyone else's time, if there's any last minute questions, we can get those answered. I think your contact information is on that last slide. So if anyone has any questions, I'd love to pass those on to you.
Please do, please do.
Are there any last minute questions someone's dying to ask?
Not a question, but I'd like to chime in and just thank Andy for joining us. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
And things there. And I will tell you, I've for all you guys, I've been one of those people in Andy's ear when he was a district director, and he was very polite, and I think did a really good job of representing us.
Thank you.
To the district, because I think we also get some on the other side that sometimes the director has their agenda and they don't listen to anybody else.
Right. Right.
Too. So it's really nice. I always enjoy seeing Andy at conferences, even if we only get a chance to say hi and quickly.
Yep.
But those long-term relationships are really fun.
Oh yes. And yeah, that just reminds me, as you know, hopefully CATA Symposium comes about somehow. In the perfect world, yeah, I'd love to have it live like it always does, but I have a feeling we may not go live this year. But I encourage all of you to participate in that. And I know I'm speaking there. I've been doing it for a couple of years. So either by Zoom or by live, I hope I see all of you again very soon.
Thank you, Mr. Paulin, and thanks everyone for coming. This was awesome, and I hope you guys all got something out of it as well.
I do have
I would
one other
like to-
comment.
I would like to take a quick group photo before we leave, just so we can post that since we have Mr. Paulin here and he's a legend in athletic training. So I want to make sure that we show everybody that we were able to hang out with him for a little bit. So on the count of 3, if you don't want your picture taken, go ahead and stop your video. And if not, I'll go ahead and take that. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. And there we go. Thank you.
Thanks,
I appreciate your
Christina.
time. If all the first years can stay on the line, that would be great.
That's not me.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. It's good to
Thank
see you
you.
again.
Thank you.
Lee.
1, 2, 3. So first year's,
Who did you want to stay on? Annette?
No, just the first years.
Oh,
just
okay.
first year's. Yes.
Okay, bye.
I mean, I like you, but yeah, bye.
Yeah. So first years I do, I said I'd send a message out about tomorrow, but I knew we had this meeting, so I had a chance to talk to you. As far as I know, we still have not